Okay, so most of us probably are familiar with this sensation when you give and you give and you give and you pour and pour into other people's cups, right? You give it all at your job. You dedicate time to family and friends. You dedicate time to hobbies, etc., etc. But it appears like you're not getting much in return. Well, and you know what my answer is going to be to this. There is no solution under capitalism. You are going to have to continuously pour into other people's cups, which is going to be mostly capitalists, and you're never going to get your reward. So this is why, instead of thinking of solutions, because most of the modern solutions are just you start exploiting other people and you get what you deserve. That's not going to work. First of all, you're not going to be able to exploit other people unless you already own the means of production, be it land, be it factories, mines, what have you, any kind of huge production you are able to manipulate somehow. Unless you have access to this, you're not going to be able to exploit other people. And even if you do succeed, you're going to notice a lot of issues with this, because you're not really controlling the people if they're only doing your bidding because you're paying them. And it's very naive to think that you actually are able to control other people using money. As soon as you lose your money, they're going to be out of the picture. This is not true control. This is unequal exchange. So this is why inequality doesn't just hurt the oppressed. It also hurts the oppressor. Okay, so this is the whole master-slave dichotomy, which is Hegelian dialectics. I think I already talked about this maybe in the comments. If you're interested to learn more, there is a great philosophy tube video from some time ago that explains the master-slave dichotomy pretty well. But the master-slave dichotomy is not about the relationship between two other people only. It's also about the relationship to oneself. When you are a slave to your own desires, when you don't understand where your desires come from, when you don't understand where your motivation comes from, this is when you also become the slave to the ideology. This is my own personal addition to this. But I digress. The fact of the matter is, even if you're able to exploit other people, you're still not going to feel fulfilled, because there's nothing fulfilling about controlling other people. True fulfillment comes from cooperation. I know, very boring and banal. And this is what I believe we need to start doing right now. We need to start investing in personal relationships that are based off of altruistic selfishness or selfish altruism, the concept that I've seen in Piotr Kropotkin's works, which I really, really appreciate. And this is the concept where if you have a need, then you need to see how it can correspond to other people's needs. And sometimes it may be very, very easy. If you have a need to care for somebody, this is easy because a lot of people want to be taken care of. But if you have a need to be taken care of, this is when you actually can be your own caregiver, because you will be able to get to know yourself if you sit with your own thoughts, if you sit and meditate upon your own desires. You can actually find more specific areas where you can care for yourself in a specific way where no one else will be able to, unless not in a capitalist type of a society. Maybe in the future we're going to be able to help each other even in very, very personal ways. But until then, we have to make do. But what you also can do is you can figure out certain areas where you can still connect to other people and fulfill your own needs, but do it in a way where you're not going to take advantage of someone else, which again is something that everybody wants and everybody kind of strives for. But it is often the question that you're posing that may not be formed very appropriately or in accordance with the necessity or in accordance with the truth. It is often that we want just to not do anything, right? And somebody else come and serve us and provide food for us, etc., etc. But this is not a true human need. This is a very childish, infantile need. That does not mean that it is not legitimate. It is a legitimate need which everybody has, but it is when we are traumatized as children, when we were not taken care of, when we actually could not take care of ourselves. This is going to sound like this in adulthood, and of course not for everyone, but for some people it may manifest as this desire to be taken care of. And trust me, this is not going to be fulfilled even if you have a person who will, or people, multiple people who will do this, who will deliver your food to you, cook for you, clean for you, etc., etc. You're actually gonna most likely feel worse. You're going to feel like you cannot provide for yourself, you're such a loser, you're so weak, etc., etc. So when you go to the underlying need, when you want to be deeply cared for and taken care of by someone else, you may realize that you have never been given the space to actually truly explore your own needs, and what you can do now is provide that space. Ask yourself, well, I don't want to cook, for example, so what can I do instead? What kind of foods can I eat without having to burden myself? And then maybe you will figure out the fact that you may be afraid that you will fail if you start cooking, or you may be afraid that you're not going to like it as much as you like some other food. And this is legitimate. And these are very, very simple things that you can actually go through. And then after you go through such experiences, you will be able to gain that confidence that, oh, well, even if I fail, even if I don't like my own food, or I fail at making myself food, I am still an agent. I am still able to express my humanity in little ways. And this is where, if you can find people to do this with, this is where you can have a communal experience where you can show each other certain little things. Maybe you can cook together. Maybe you can ask somebody to help you. You can ask for advice, or you can go to each other's places and cook food for each other. And again, I'm giving food examples just because food is something that is not too condemned yet. Of course, there is a lot of fat phobia going on, but there is still a lot in all countries all over the world. There is still a lot of good that is connected to communal eating and communal cooking. There's still a lot of cultural remnants from the past where people can connect to each other, but that doesn't have to be cooking. It can be literally anything. If you feel the need to be taken care of in an intellectual way, maybe you want to be listened to, and you feel like you're not heard, well, you've got to find people who are interested in the things you're interested in as well. And you've got to dig through all of that trauma voice, all of that dialogue with the other. When you sit with other people and you feel like maybe they're not listening enough to you, maybe they're not giving you enough space, learn to sit with this and learn to actually analyze where the truth may not be truthing as much, where maybe you are living off of those older narratives. And also learn to gain perspective on when someone is actually being harmful, because nowadays there is a lot of confusion in a lot of younger people about what is harmful and what is abuse, etc., etc. And it's necessary to actually have very clear boundaries about what is harmful and what is a whim or a fancy, because sometimes people may not act the way you want them to. That doesn't mean you just move on and never talk to this person ever again. You learn to cooperate until the point where you realize that there are more risks associated with this person and there may be more harm coming from that person than benefit. And there is no single person ever in this world that is never going to harm anyone. That is just impossible, because harm comes with the territory. If you want the benefit of relationships and connections, you've got to also learn to process the grief and the trauma that may come with a relationship. That does not mean that it will hurt a lot and that it will be bad. That just means that it is all the normal part of that spiral, that dialectical spiral. It is the unity and opposition of the opposites. If you only gain and gain from the relationship, that probably means you're taking advantage of someone else. And if you are only giving and giving in a relationship, then again, this is something that you can remedy by asking yourself honest questions and openly communicating to other people, which is obviously the type of advice that people have been giving each other forever, but that is still a very useful piece of advice. So instead of sitting and brooding on your own and thinking of how you can fulfill your needs under capitalism, you can't. This is by design. You're not meant to be able to fulfill your human needs. You are meant to pay for services which actually substitute normal human interaction. But we've got to find ways, any ways we can, to be able to relate to each other as humans, not as products, not as labor force. We have to reclaim as much of that free time together and for each other. And we can practice that right now. And we can practice that and honor our needs. Because taking care of yourself is still absolutely necessary. If you're depressed, if you're angry, if you're bitter, you're not going to be a successful organizer. I've said it time and time again, and I've seen it happen. I've seen it happen to people when they completely burn out and they start doing things that they probably shouldn't have, and then they may possibly hurt themselves or others. So you've got to be mindful of that. You're not just doing this for yourself when you're seeking the answers for your human needs, for the fulfillment of your human needs. It is okay, it is normal to be selfish. It is okay and normal to also reflect on those areas of selfishness. Because most of those selfish desires that we have, they're either ideological, they're imposed on us by the capitalist superstructure, or they are the perversion, so to speak, of the actual normal human needs, and they just manifest in a way that is a little bit harder to decipher. Just as I talked last time in my last video about the analysis of delirium according to Lacan. So you can practice that by asking yourself very simple questions. What it is I truly desire, what it is I truly need. And I know I've been speaking about all of this for years, but I will continue because it's necessary. And if you're a communist or a socialist, you need to get to this kind of organizing too. You need to start organizing a community of people who are learning to live according to their humanity and not according to the rules of the profit. Because under communism, it's going to be the human that is the priority. And we've got to start prioritizing humans now. And we are humans too. So we've got to learn to prioritize ourselves without hurting others. So let me know what you think. I hope you have a great day today. Consider support me on Patreon. Do take care of yourself and your community first. Subscribe to me on all the other social medias, even though I don't do anything there. And I'll talk to you sometime later.